How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. So it is the start of the week again. It's time for the Monday agenda. Let's get straight into the video. So before I start with the Monday agenda, again, I will start with the plea to subscribe to the channel if you do watch the videos. Still, about 70% of people who are watching the videos are not subscribed. So just hit the subscribe button. You'll get notified every time a video goes live. And if you enjoy the videos, you may as well. Why not? Let's start with the Monday agenda. So obviously, there's only one place to start. It is John Kennedy's first match as Celtic manager. 1-0 win over Aberdeen, odds in Edward, with the only goal of the game coming 7 minutes into the game at Celtic Park. Look, I can't sit here and say that a magic switch has been flicked and Celtic are suddenly playing like prime Barcelona. It was a fairly dull affair. The first half was decent, the second half was putrid. Nothing much had changed in the last 3 days, and not that I expected much to change, but here and there were some minor tweaks that you might have expected and was happy enough to see happening. So let's start with the starting 11. So he went with Scott Bain in goals. Obviously the back four stayed pretty similar, with John Joe Kenny at right back, Stephen Welsh, Ayer in the middle. Then Laxalt came in at left back, which is interesting enough. I know Greg Taylor did pick up a knock in the last game, so maybe that's what it was. Brown came at the base of the diamond with Turnbull and McGregor, and then Ryan Christie at the top with Odsonne Edouard, and Klimala at the top of the up front with Odsonne Edouard, which was more interesting than anything, but that didn't seem to work out. I thought that the reason that Patrick Klimala would have been there would have been to stretch Aberdeen defence, but he didn't do much in the game. He didn't get on the ball much, he didn't create much, he didn't have many chances. So all in all, it was fairly disappointing from him. The first half, like I said, was pretty decent. I don't think anybody could deny that. The second half was absolutely dreadful. I don't think anybody could deny that either. But let me know what you think, and let me know what you thought of the performance below, because I do want to hear some of your opinions as well. Essentially, what that was steady the ship, and I think anybody at Celtic would have thought that. I don't think anybody expected something magical to happen, especially the fact that John Kennedy was part of the team under Neil Lennon. I don't think anything was magically going to just appear and Celtic were going to be amazing again. I think it was a game where Celtic needed to get the win, and they got the win done, and essentially that's all we are for the end of the season. I said that as long as I enjoy watching Celtic until the end of the season, I'll be happy regardless of who is in charge. So, and I did enjoy that first half, I have to say, and I did enjoy the build up to the game. It was the first game in about 4 months that I've been excited to watch Celtic again, because I thought something was building there. After the game, John Kennedy was speaking, and one thing that I did like about it was that there was no rhetoric, there was no pretending that this was a fantastic game, pretending that it was a fantastic performance. He basically told it what it was. It was a good first half, bad second half. The players looked tired in the second half, and it got a bit scrappy. That's essentially what he said after the game, and he was pretty spot on. I'm just glad that it was none of this, oh, it was an excellent game, we've created so many chances, when plainly we were watching the same game as Neil Lennon was at the time. I'll just name him. Neil Lennon was watching these games. So that was an interesting post-match press conference from John Kennedy, and I thought it was just nice and refreshing. I don't know what you think about John Kennedy. I did speak about his press conference before the game when I was doing my match preview on Saturday morning, and I was pretty impressed with John Kennedy in his press conference before the game. I thought he spoke well. I thought he spoke and outlined the key issues at Celtic this year. Obviously, he's been part of it as well. So I do understand the opinion of John Kennedy that he is as to blame as Neil Lennon is for this season. But I also have heard a lot of good things about John Kennedy as well. So I'm a little bit torn on where I stand on him at the minute, and whether or not he'll be there next season, even if it as an assistant boss. I don't think, by the sounds of him, he wanted to take the job, or at least he wasn't ready to jump in Neil Lennon's grave so quickly after he got sacked or resigned or whatever happened in that week. I would presume that it was actually here, Neil, just resign so we don't have to sack you sort of decision that happened. But essentially, Neil Lennon's out the door. No more of that. John Kennedy is the man in charge, and he's the man that we're going to be talking about until the end of the season, unless there is a new manager. And that's where we kick off with number 2 on the item on Monday agenda. It is, who is Celtic's next manager? Now, I'm not going to go too deep on this today, because I am going to do a deep dive into the potential managers in probably this week or next week, and who I think should be the Celtic boss. I'm going to throw in a couple of names that maybe might not be linked with the job. Currently, there are rumours spreading all over the place. Of course, there is. There's always going to be rumours. Roy Keane, Martin O'Neill, blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to be a decision that's going to be made at the end of the season, which could play into who it potentially is. Currently, in the manager odds, Eddie Howe is still favoured to take the job at 4-1. Steve Clarke is level with him at 4-1. Paul Lambert is being thrown into the mix because he has left his Ipswich Town job, and please God, do not let it be Paul Lambert. I take Roy Keane over Paul Lambert at this point. Actually, no, I wouldn't. That's a lie. Scratch that. I would not take Roy Keane over Paul Lambert. Paul Lambert at least has experience currently managing. Paul Lambert, Roy Keane, Martin O'Neill, Mick McCarthy, Rafa Benitez. It's probably unfair to throw Rafa Benitez in the mix with Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane and blah, blah, blah. But I think my main point would be that he's still part of that churn of managers who are from a certain era. It would be a big money move, it would be a celebrity move, and it would be short term. Would they have success? It probably would, but would it be long lasting? I doubt it. So that's where I stand. I don't want a Rafa Benitez. I don't want a short term fix. I don't want a football man coming in to the club who's going to be successful domestically. Remember, Celtic basically have a probably 65% chance of being domestically sound or domestically successful. So no matter who they bring in, Ronnie Deila won a league title. That's where we're at the minute. So that, like, I don't want someone who's going to come in and be a short-term fix, be successful over 2 years, and Celtic still do nothing over in Europe in 5 years' time. So I want a long-term strategy from the club with a basis on youth, a basis on bringing in players, and a basis of getting the right amount of money for the players you're selling. Because you're looking at Christopher Ayer, who's probably going to leave at the end of the season. Celtic are likely to cash in on him because of the 18-month contract, and I doubt if Celtic are going to get more than 15 million for him. It's going to be another Virgil van Dijk situation. Celtic sold Virgil van Dijk for 15 million, and then he went to Liverpool for 90 million. That's where we're at the minute. That's where Celtic are short selling themselves, and they're not getting enough for the talent that's going out. And I do believe that the way that Christopher Ayer is playing at the minute, for the age that he is, he has the potential to go on, maybe not to the heights of Virgil van Dijk, because I mean Virgil van Dijk's the best centre half in the world, but he has the potential to be top quality, top 4 in the Premier League, Real Madrid, Barcelona, whatever, in a couple of years' time. Maybe not at 22, 23, but by the time he's 26, he will be playing at a top club at top level in the Champions League, and Celtic will regret selling him for 15 million if they do sell him for that. So that's where we're at with the managers at the minute. I promise I will do a deep dive into the managers and who's going to be the next manager, and potentially some left field choices as well. So let's move on to item number 3. Stephen Welsh was speaking to the media. It's interesting to see when a young player comes out and actually does a longer form interview rather than just the usual 2 minutes after the match. And he's spoken a lot of things. He touched on Lennon as well, and he touched on John Kennedy. One thing that was interesting about his words about John Kennedy was that Steve McManus has obviously come up, and John Kennedy being a former defender himself, Welsh thinks that he can learn a lot from him. He's comfortable being coached by him. McManus was his reserve team coach, so it's good to have that relationship there and sort of build on that. And he just seems to be growing into his confidence a little bit more as a first team player. So that's nice to see. The one thing I'm going to talk about though is his comments on Scott Brown. So obviously Scott Brown is on the final year of his contract. He has that extension to continue on next year. Some people are saying he's retiring. Some people say he should retire, and some people say that you need that sort of character around the dressing room. I would probably be in that boat, that don't start Scott Brown every single game, but I do think he offers something that's probably intangible at the minute with data, the leadership qualities around the dressing room, and that just voice that's being experienced in the ground, experience in these big games, pressurized situations, and he can just be that calm voice. And that is sort of where Stephen Welsh touched on and talked about how welcoming Brown was to him, how good it is to have him in the dressing room, how much of a leader he is. And I do believe Scott Brown has that. But more interesting than that, he also spoke about how good he is in training as well. So Stephen Welsh said that you can't discount how good a player he still is. He has been such a big help to me over the last few years. His intensity in every single training session never drops for a second. Every single day, even if it's a rest day, he's doing everything he can to prepare. If you look at the training sessions, his stats are still up amongst the highest in terms of run. Bruni is always at the top, and he is always one of the fittest players in the team. He has been brilliant for Celtic for so many years, and it goes without saying that we all want him to stay. So that is very interesting from Stephen Welsh, because I suppose most people would be of the opinion that Brown's legs are gone a little bit, and I don't think you can deny that he's lost that definite turn of pace. Whether or not he's unfit or not, I would probably argue against, but he definitely has lost that just split second train of thought, and that just happens with age and age regression. So I do think that Brown would be a good person to have, especially in a moment of transition where there may be 5-6 key first team players leaving the team by the end of this season, a new manager coming in, a new director of football coming in, a new CEO. So all of this transition, you do need someone that's going to be, who was a key part of that group, staying there. Someone like Brown should be a key member of the team. Maybe not a starting player, but I do think he does bring something to the table, and he will be worthwhile sticking around, especially in this moment of transition. So it's one of those things that you can't measure with stats, you can't measure with data, but these are human beings, so you do need to think about that. You need to take that into consideration as well. Let's finish off with the Celtic and Rangers Colts. So this has been building over the last couple of years. What do we do with the youth teams from two teams like Celtic, who have such a conveyor belt of youth coming through, because they obviously don't have a proper youth league, and they want to play against adults. So apparently this is now reports in the Herald and in the Sun as well, that Celtic and Rangers are going to offer $3 million to buy space in the League 1 and League 2 for their Colt teams. Report in the Sun to say that Celtic and Rangers are offering League 1 and League 2 teams $1.5 million each to enter their Colt teams into the leagues. Peterhead boss has already come out and spoken against this. Jim McAnally said that he has always been against it, and he will always be. So it doesn't matter what he has to say about it. Scottish football doesn't owe it to Celtic and Rangers to develop their players, and you can obviously see his point of view, because he's fighting it out in the lower leagues, fighting for any sort of funding that he can possibly get, and then the two richest teams in Scotland come in and they want to enter their youth teams into the leagues, and you can see where he stands. I mean, this is interesting because it happened in Ireland, in the League of Ireland last year. Shamrock Rovers, Dermot Desmond's team that he also owns stocks in, they entered their B team into the first division of League of Ireland, and they actually got on pretty well. I mean, they didn't challenge for anything, but it was good for those players to play against men for the first time. And I do think this is a problem with Scottish football, and a problem with Irish football as well. I mean, Irish football, Scottish football is kind of in the same boat, just fighting against the conglomerate of the Premier League and fighting for money and fighting for space. And how do you develop these players to the extent where they used to? And to do that, you have to play against men. Any former pro will tell you that. Any current pro will tell you that the best experience they ever had was going out on loan, playing against men and getting that first team experience, because youth football is completely different to first team football. So it is vital that Celtic and Rangers as well get their younger players playing first team football, and if they're not doing that for the first team, they need to be out on loan, or they need to play for these Colt teams that are going to be playing in the League 1 and League 2. And with Celtic's long-term plan and goal, if they have a director of football in, if they have Dominic Mackay as CEO and he sees this as a long-term strategy, then this is really important for them to get off the ground and pay whatever they need to. 1.5 million seems a bit stingy in my opinion. If you really believe that this is going to develop your youth team and your youth players, then 1.5 million, you'll make that off with one transfer of these players that you're going to develop. So I do think they should be paying a little bit more to the smaller side, because as much as Celtic and Rangers and Scottish football in general is struggling to fight against the massive conglomerate that is the Premier League, these smaller teams like Peterhead are fighting to struggle against the massive conglomerate that is Celtic and Rangers. So you have to take things in context. So I think Celtic should be paying a little bit more to the lower leagues if they want to enter the Colt teams into the league. But I do think it is a good idea because they do need to get their youth teams playing in adult leagues, playing against them and going up against them, getting first team football, because if they're not getting it for the first team, then they need to get it somewhere. And take Stephen Welsh, for example. He has taken too long to get into the first team, and now he's a key player for them. Kieran Tierney came through the youth academy. We see a load of young Celtic players who just can't get through to the first team. What are they doing with them? Because they're not going out and loan. Karamenko Dembele is a good example of this. Why is he not getting chances at first team level? So at least if the Colt team was playing against adults, then you could play them in that team and they'd be able to develop, and you'd see what they're like at first team level. What do you think? What do you think of John Kennedy? What do you think of the new Celtic manager? Who do you think should get the job? Stephen Welsh, what's your opinions on him? Or anything else really? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to as many as I can as soon as I can. And I'll take anything. If you want me to talk about anything on the Monday agenda, just let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll chat to you later.